Line's good.
Never on.
Close.
Hard. Hard, Lisa.
Come on, Brent. Line's good. Got real close.
The hair high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham. Scott is socially distancing, as he always is. Hello, Scott.
Sean, I'm doing what I'm best at.
Sitting at home by yourself.
What can I say?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of that recently here in the nation's capital. Everyone is hopefully following the recommendations of local health authorities wherever it is you live. I know, Scott, here in Ottawa, the weather's starting to turn, and you can just feel that, when I went out to the grocery store the other day, like, people just want to be out. And, so as the weather turns here, more and more, hopefully people continue to follow the rules. Of course, I was on a meeting today. One of my colleagues out there in Calgary said that it was minus 15 today. So, they're, I'm sure, looking forward, or excited about the staying inside to a certain degree.
Yeah. We're lucky we're not at those type of conditions. I just got back from a walk, actually, and I saw a lot of people out. So yeah. I was doing a lot of diving, weaving and bobbing and stuff to try and stay away. Yes. I think I was successful, but I had a very full afternoon, Sean.
Yeah, you had a really full afternoon. So this week would have been, or was scheduled to be, the men's world championship over there in Glasgow. Why do I always doubt myself? It's supposed to be in Glasgow?
Glasgow, you're right.
Yeah, okay. There's two options, and I always doubt myself on whether between the two of them. So in Glasgow, and of course it was I believe officially postponed by the World Curling Federation. They might try to run this in the fall, given the significance of the event relative to Olympic qualifying points. So I don't think there's been an official word yet, but certainly it's not taking place right now in Glasgow. But Scott, that doesn't mean we can't try to figure out who wins and who, we can award a world championship.
Yeah, why not, right? We've seen a lot of this being done, with the baseball season just starting. People are running like MLB, the show simulations every day to see how their team would do. And I thought, hey, maybe we could do something with curling. Problem is, Sean, there's no nice website out there that you say, hey, can I simulate my curling event? And they say, yes, you can. Here you go.
Yeah, it's too bad because for the history podcast that I do, we simulated a website called What If Sports, where you can create all-time all-star teams and draft your own teams and run a simulator to see how they would do against each other. We did that on the history podcast that I do, but yeah, on that website, there was a tab for baseball. There was a tab for hockey, obviously, football, basketball. I couldn't find the curling tab, though, Scott.
Yeah, so weird. I looked for it, too, on that site, to be honest. But what I did was, I know there's a lot of data available on Curling Zone, so maybe I can come up with some way of approximating a team's percentage chance of winning against each other based on something, right?
Yep. So based on the stats, based on the information we have about each of the teams.
Exactly. So have you ever heard of Bill James, who's the sabermetrician, sort of the father of baseball statistics?
Godfather.
Yeah. So there's a lot of models that have come since, but there's a pretty easy model that estimates the probability of one team defeating another team based on their true winning percentage. So I went on to Curling Zone, and I got a bunch of different stats. I tried to find out your who's won and who's lost. How many points do you score per game? How many points do you give up? What's your hammer efficiency? I love that. What's your force efficiency, steel efficiency, and all this sort of stuff. I put it into a big sheet, and I was trying to decide how could I figure out how the teams that are playing in this event would fare against each other.
Right.
So what I did was I took the team's winning percentage, and I also took their Pythagorean winning percentage, which is based on the number of points they've scored and the number of points they've given up. What would you expect their winning percentage to be?
Right. Because sometimes it can be weird, right? Like if you're playing bad competition and you're winning like 12-2, and then you play good competitions and lose 7-6, that can throw those numbers a bit.
Right. So you want to sort of level the field in a certain way. Now,
yeah.
I don't think I could use either one of those distinctly. Whether it's their winning percentage from this year, I should say, not just this season, and then the Pythagorean. So I kind of tried to split the difference between the two of them.
Right.
So that's just based on points for and against, right?
Yep.
But we all know that there's some skill in curling as well.
What? Outrageous.
Crazy, right? So there's been a lot of papers written, and something I saw on the Curl with Math blog, who is one of the participants in the Twitter spiel out there. I can't remember who he is, but it's good stuff. And they've found that the hammer factor is a very strong indicator towards skill. And you'll see the top teams in the rankings having higher hammer factor numbers than the worst teams, like the teams farther down the list. So what's hammer factor? It's two statistics put together. So it's hammer efficiency minus the steal defense.
Right.
So the higher the hammer efficiency, the better. It means you're scoring multiple points with the hammer more often. And the lower your steal defense is good, because that's the percentage of ends where you give up a steal. Mm-hmm. So both of these stats take ends in which your team has the hammer and does not blank. There's other stuff in here that we've talked about, like force efficiency and stealing efficiency. Those two stats are for when teams are without the hammer. And there's been some papers written, some stuff that those two factors are a lot more random and aren't quite as indicative of skill as the other two are.
Well, I think that kind of makes sense, just from just a logical perspective, that you're more dependent on the other team there for whatever that result is going to be. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think this is why teams, are in some cases intentionally going down by 2 to keep the hammer instead of being tied without, because that sense of control that they have, and if you're trying to steal, you need somebody to miss.
Right.
Even if you have a great setup, as we saw at the Brier, you need, like, these guys are so good, you're going to need a miss at the end.
Right, exactly. So you put those two stats together and you get your hammer factor. Now, if I'm looking at the hammer factor for the teams in this field, maybe we should go through the teams in the field first.
Sure. Let's it's for most of the countries, it's people you would expect. Of course, Brad Gushue won the Brier, so they're there for Canada. The Chinese team is Zhu Quang. I think that's how you say it. I think it might be Chang. I don't know. Do you know
how? Chang, sure.
Chang. Well, Paul, I'll look it up while you're talking more about the math and make sure we get that right. The Danish team is represented by Tobias Thune at skip, Mark Muskowitz. I always say his name wrong too.
Muskatowicz. Yeah.
Muskatowicz. The German team, we've seen them before, of course. Italy, Joël Retournaz is returning, or was scheduled to return, to represent Italy again. Wouter is back from the Netherlands. Thomas Ulsrud, of course, has teamed up with Stefan Wallstedt and his team there, and they are representing Norway. The Russians, represented by Sergei Glukov. Scotland, represented by Bruce Mowat and his team. They won the Scottish Nationals. Kim Chang-min representing South Korea. Of course, Nick Edin is the Swedish team. Yannick Schwaller, perhaps a bit of a surprise, beating out Peter de Cruz and his team in the Swiss final there. And, of course, the Americans, as always, represented by John Schuster. Well, not always, but mostly.
Mostly. Yeah, so lots of great teams, obviously. Looking at the hammer factor, there's a couple things that are very interesting. Maybe the least interesting thing, Canada is 1, Sweden 2, Scotland 3. Fair enough, right? Switzerland, a team that's had a great year that you would think is, they're probably pretty good. They're 10th on this list of 13 teams. Really not what you'd expect. Korea is number 4 on this list. So maybe a little surprising to see Switzerland that low, but otherwise it sort of shakes out how you would expect. Germany is 13th. Denmark, I think, is 12th, or Netherlands are 12th. Denmark 10th or 9th, 8th. So anyway, it breaks out the sort of how you'd expect. So,
right, and yeah, the I guess maybe the surprise in there would be the Koreans, wouldn't it? Just at least for a North American audience,
right?
In that this is a team we don't know much about.
No, you're right. So they're a team that's had a hammer efficiency of 0.5, so 50% efficiency with the hammer, and only given up steals 18% of the time. Looking at the number of games they've played, 68 games, in the same neighborhood as most of these teams. There's a couple that are pretty low, but otherwise, pretty much what you would expect.
Okay.
One other thing.
Sorry, I just want to say real quick too before I forget. According to this phonetic guide I found, it is Chang.
Chang. Okay. Good.
So there you go.
One of the other things that I didn't do properly was I put in the wrong Danish team.
Okay.
I put in Michael Krause. I put in all the stats, and it was like when you were reading off the names of the teams, and I went, "Oh shit, shoot." But
that's okay.
So based on looking at their hammer efficiency or their hammer factor, they have about the same hammer factor. Where it would be different was they've won a lot more games this year. Sorry, I thought I had their page up. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, but if you think about it, Scott, like, with all due respect to Denmark, and not to necessarily spoil the results of this, does it make that much of a difference?
Yeah, maybe not. So they had because they only played 17 games, and the
right.
17 games were against not that great competition. Like,
yeah.
to be honest, looking at it, like the Danish Championship, the Baltic Super League, and the Latvia Challenger. So I'm going to say their winning percentage was like .824. They went
but
14
the sample
3.
size is, but as you say, it's really small sample size against competition that nowhere near what they would have faced here.
Right. So I'm sorry. I'll run it again if I have time tomorrow.
Okay.
Whoops, excuse me. It shouldn't be that hard, but to make everything easier on Excel, I had to, copy and paste. And anyway, it might not follow the breadcrumbs properly, but for the sake of this, we're going to say that, sorry, Denmark, you're probably not going to win anyway. Okay, so now we have...
Well, now I'm just going to have to answer angry emails from Denmark all day tomorrow.
Yeah, that's why you get the emails and not me. Not me. So I would be interested to see if it would change, but like you say, not that many games. So I didn't consider putting the percent chance of winning, filtering it against number of games played. But maybe I could. Like getting it down to winning percentage per game anyway.
Like sort of the same way the NBA is like per 48 stats.
Yeah, and try to get it
per
up
36,
to get it up to like a per, I don't know, 65 games or something.
Yeah, something like that.
As a general average, but
yeah.
Anyway, these are things that we can take to the next one.
Yeah, well, we got time to do that.
Yeah. So
Okay, so you have the hammer stat. So you have
hammer
the
factor.
hammer factor. You have the winning percentage factor.
Right.
So when you put those two together, like it's great that we have these, but then how do you go from those numbers to a simulation?
Right. So I talked about Bill James a bit before. There's a formula called log5, and this is a formula that he invented to estimate the probability that a team will win based on the true winning percentage of each team.
Okay.
So it's the probability that Team A will beat Team B is the winning percentage of A minus the winning percentage of A times the winning percentage of B divided by winning percentage of A plus winning percentage of B minus 2 times the winning percentage of A times the winning percentage of B. Now, if you didn't write that down, I'm sorry. But so basically what it turns out is that if Team A's winning percentage is 100%, this formula will always return a 1.
Okay.
And if Team A's winning percentage is 0, it will always return a 0.
Right.
And so it gives, based on each team's percent chance of winning the games in which they've already played,
Yep.
it gives a chance that one or the other team will win. And so the sum of these two for any two teams has to be exactly 1, right?
Okay.
So, for example, in running the numbers, the Canada versus China game.
Yeah.
Well, I did something else to the percentage first. So the Canada versus China game, based just on those numbers themselves, just on the log5 formula,
Yep.
it's a 64% chance for Brad Gushu to win,
Yep.
and 36 for China to win.
Right.
Now, I thought, hey, we should bring this hammer factor into play somehow.
Sure.
So what I did was if I was trying to calculate the percentage that Canada would win, I took their hammer factor, subtracted the opponent's hammer factor,
Yep.
and divided it by 2.
Okay.
I just thought I didn't want to make it too big a swing percentage-wise.
Sure.
So anyway, what that did, after I sort of applied that, Canada's winning percentage chance went up to 74 and China's 26.
Right.
So I did that for everybody for the whole thing. I'll post this on our website or maybe on Twitter tomorrow. But there are percentage chances for each team to win in a head-to-head matchup.
Right.
What I then did was for each team took, I think, 10 random numbers for each game. So for the Canada-China game, I generated a set of 10 random numbers between 0 and 100.
Yep.
I took the median of those numbers, which is the middle one. So not the average, but the median.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the number I assigned to that game.
Right.
So each game had its own number, which means there was 80 something numbers. Anyway. And so based on then the team's winning percentage chance, those numbers would correspond to falling either within the one team's half of 100 or the other team's.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah. So like
Canada,
so,
China.
Yeah. So out of those numbers, you are assigned the same percentage as the winning percent, and then that's how we determine the win and the loss.
That's what we're going to do for the playoffs. But for this, so for the Canada-China game, Canada had a 74% chance to win.
Yeah.
China a 26. So anything that was less than 74 on that 0 to 100,
Yeah.
I gave the win to Canada. If it
Okay.
was 75 through 100,
Right.
then the win would have gone to China.
Okay.
So what it does is if the percentage chance of winning is very close, actually there was Switzerland versus Sweden. The percent of each team winning was exactly 50%.
Oh, wow.
So then when the random number generator generates a range of numbers, and I pick the middle one, whichever side of the 50 that's on, that's the team that gets the win.
Okay.
Whoa. So
yeah, easy now. Easy now.
well,
Don't hurt yourself
I'm
there,
talking
Scott.
so much here. It's,
Yeah.
It's tough. So based on that, I simulated the round robin.
Yeah. So
And-
now we have a whole grid here that, again, we'll post these so you can sort of follow along with what Scott's talking about, where we have wins and losses the same way that the World Curling Federation sets up its grid. I don't know if Curling Canada does this in their stuff either, like that's publicly available. But certainly the World Curling Federation does this, where it's just a grid of, each team is on the side, each team is on the top, and when you put them together, you see who wins that game.
Yeah, and so I did the team on the top going down.
Yeah.
That'll be their wins and losses against the other teams. I think a lot of other ones do it going the other way with
Yeah,
the wins
it took
and
me
losses.
it took me like a minute to figure this one out just because of that.
Yeah, it's just like a switching the formulas if you want to change it, but
Right, I was looking at it like Canada got crushed when I initially looked at it. Oh man.
yeah. Well, maybe I'll transpose it and we can.
Jeez, did Gushu like slip on his way to the arena and break his ankle or something? Like what is going on?
Well, so Sean, you've given away Canada. Did quite well.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Canada did well in a simulated curling event that was created by a Canadian. Canada did well. What a shocker.
Yeah. So do you want to go through the standings here, or you want to go?
Let's run through the standings.
Bottom to top, or?
Yeah, let's do that. So we sort of said that Denmark didn't have a chance, and they didn't. They go 1-11 in this simulation.
Yeah, 1-11 for Denmark. Some tough luck there. Their one win was against Germany.
Yep.
Who also went 1-11.
Yes. So the two teams at the bottom of the table, they're Germany and Denmark. Tough break for them. They have to go back, requalify, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I guess all the European teams sort of have to requalify, don't they? But they go in. Tough break for them. Germany, their one win came against Russia, who went 2-10 and was the third worst team on the table.
Yeah. So if we look back at our hammer factor to see if this is what we would expect to be the case, right? If I looked at Russia was 11th, Denmark, as we said, was 8.
Yeah.
And who was the last place again? I forgot. Germany was 13th. So not exactly unexpected based on hammer factor alone.
No, so but it does make sense, right? That it's good that is a factor and that it plays into the simulation, because as we've seen so often, it really does make a difference in these games.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. So above Russia were the Norwegians, going 4-8 here. They get wins against China, Denmark, Germany, and Russia. So the teams below them, plus China, and China, they were tied with them. So China goes 4-8, as well as do the Netherlands, the Dutch team, also going 4-8, wins there. Sort of these teams kind of beat the teams below them and right around them,
right,
in the table. So they're all grouped there at 4-8 and worse. Then we get into the playoff teams, or at least a tie for the 6th playoff spot. Here, Scott, the Italians at 7-5. That sort of fits with what we might have expected for them in this field. I think if we were doing a preview, we would have said in this field they could have a chance to make a playoffs in this new expanded World Curling Federation playoff pool. They go 7-5. Losses for them against the Koreans, the Scottish team, the Swedes, the Swiss, and the Americans. Probably the biggest shock on the table here is Italy beating Canada in the simulation, I think.
Yeah, Italy beating Canada. It's not that crazy. Brad Gushu's team was the best team statistics-wise at this event, but yeah, I mean, we've seen Italy pull some upsets before. Like upset against Brad Gushu before at the 2006 Olympics.
Yes.
So, not crazy, but they were ninth in terms of hammer factor, so a bit of a random result, and we do see these from time to time at World Championships.
Yeah, and at Scotties and Briars too all the time. You get those games.
Yeah.
Laurie Eddy beat Chris McCarville. Right?
Yeah.
Nunavut beat Northern Ontario at the Scotties this year.
Yeah.
And
So
you play that game 100 times. I don't think that's going to happen, more than 5-10 times.
Italy against Canada?
No, Chris McCarville losing to Nunavut.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
But,
So but it can happen.
So Italy had against Canada 32.29% chance of winning.
Yeah,
and they
so
did.
There you go. So they win. But they missed the playoffs because they lost to the Swedes. Scott, Nicholas Edin in this simulation did not do particularly well for what we would expect a Nicholas Edin team to do, going 7-5. But that win against the Italians gets them into the playoffs in this no tiebreaker situation. Some weird losses here for the Swedish team. I think when you look at what their table looks like, the Canadian, well, maybe not, the Canadians, the Koreans, the Scots, the Swiss, and the Americans.
Yeah, so the only game they lost in which they were a favorite, quote unquote favorite, was that game against Switzerland where they were 50%. They were 50-50 exactly on that one. So that one was basically a coin flip. But
some of their percentage, like some of that, I know they would have not been favorites against like Gushu, but against even a team like Schuster, you would think, or I would think too, and you can tell me what the numbers are, but I would think like at worst they'd be like 45%, and at some point over 5 games, even if you're underdog in 5 games, you would think that you'll hit maybe one.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of weird, to be honest. Like, based on their numbers, they're sort of unlucky winning percentage wise on the year based on the points they've scored. They're about 5. Their expected win percentage would be 74, and they're only at 69.
Right.
So, yeah, a little strange. I am a bit surprised, but I'm even a bit surprised that those percentages are so low. So low. I mean. Yeah, I think a lot of the randomness with Korea, their winning percentage on the year is 78%, and their expected is 76. So even at 77% expected win percentage, that's going to make them a favorite over pretty much everybody before taking into account hammer factor, where they're also pretty good. So yeah, maybe just an off year for Nicholas Edin.
Yeah, maybe. But they finished 6th. 5th place goes to Scotland. Bruce Mount, his team, they go 8-4 in the simulator. Losing to Canada, Korea, Switzerland, and the Americans, but they have a secure 5th place finish. Tie for 3rd place between the Swiss and the Americans, both going 9-3. The Americans beat the Swiss in this simulator, so they get 3rd place. I don't know how much of a prize that is for John Schuster in this scenario, given that the prize for 3rd place, winning that tiebreaker, is getting to play Nicholas Edin in a quarterfinal game.
Yeah, just a second. I'm thinking that actually USA lost.
Is this wrong? Oh my goodness.
Look at the grid here. And
USA. It's the other way around. Excuse me. Yeah, so John Schuster gets a big win by losing to the Swiss. Doesn't have to play Nicholas Edin in the quarterfinal, but the Swiss and the Americans both tie with a record of 9-3. The Swiss lose to the Chinese team, which is the 3rd loss for them, as they both lost to Korea and the Canadians. So the 3rd loss for the Americans to the Swiss, the 3rd loss for the Swiss to the Chinese. And the top 2 teams, you might have guessed it from how we've been talking, how they've beaten everybody. Canada and Korea both going 11-1. We talked about Italy getting the win over Canada, so that means obviously then that Canada beat Korea for the tiebreak. They go first place, and those two teams get byes into the semifinals in this format.
Yeah, so anything really stand out to you there, Sean, in terms of those teams?
I think it's the Koreans, right? I think the question now becomes, is it possible in this type of the math of it, or even for us to know, like, to put in like a degree of difficulty on that winning percentage? Like, is there a way to take like what is the points, like how they assign like strength of field points?
Yeah,
is there a way to factor that into the winning percentage somehow?
I think there is, but I did this for 4 hours today and was
I'm not being critical.
I'm
I'm not being critical of the process. I'm just wondering if that would be the next level of it, is to say to put the winning percentage into more context.
Yeah, I think that would be the way to do it. You're absolutely right. Having strength of field measurement for each event that they played in, and then weighing the wins and losses, giving them a little more value on each of those. That would be a good way. A good way to do it. Or even,
I mean, if somebody has a lot of time out there, like a lot of time, and wants to do this, you could even probably do it at a per game basis, because you can take, for as much as the order of merit is problematic, and probably with a team like Korea, who's playing a lot of their games against teams who aren't playing WCT events as much, the order of merit is going to be a little thrown off for them. But you could do it on a game by game basis and say, beat this team and this is where they are on the order of merit. You beat this team, this is where they are on the order of merit. You really could get that micro and assign something to each win and each loss based off the quality of the opponent.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time researching how to try and create ELO rankings. You might have seen them on 538.com. They're sort of the rankings that they've developed for each team in a league. So, in NBA or something, after every game that's played, the winning percent, the chance of each team winning based on their ELO rankings is calculated before the game. And then if the expected team wins, their ranking goes up a certain amount and the losing team's down, and then the other way around, right? And it's a system used by chess players originally to try and calculate who was the best player in chess in the world. And it's a direct head-to-head comparison. Now, the problem I had was that I hadn't started anywhere, right? I was just sort of starting from nothing. And I Googled a lot of how to start ELO rankings, and it was always like, well, one team will play the next team. And I'm like, well, I still don't have anything to start with.
Right.
So if anybody's got ideas out there about how to start some ELO rankings for each rank, that would be pretty cool. The other challenge, if you want to do that year over year, would be how much weight does a certain player take if they choose to move to a different team or whatever. So it's not like in the NBA where there's however many teams, 31 teams, 30 teams?
30.
So where there's like the same amount of teams and the same amount of the wins and losses all have to work out, right?
And each team is playing the same number of games, and the average is going to be 41 on the number of wins over, like, the 30 teams. If you add up all their wins and divide it by 30, it's going to equal 41.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you don't have that. It's a little harder with the curling. You're right.
Yeah, a little bit harder.
Yeah. So that's our rankings. That's our table. So let's go into the playoffs here, Scott. So we have, as we said, in the new format, 6 teams make the playoffs. First 2 teams get a bye. So they have a matchup of the Americans against the Scottish team. Here in the 4-5 game, and the 3-6 game is Switzerland and Sweden. So what do we got?
So what we got is, let's start with the Switzerland-Sweden game.
Okay.
And as I mentioned a couple times, that their pre-tournament odds when they played each other, their pre-tournament head-to-head was 50% each, right? This was the only one where it was 50%.
Right.
So pretty crazy that, to be honest, that two teams would be flip of the coin.
Yeah.
So what I decided to do was then take those same odds, but apply a fudge factor, if you will, of a 5% chance of winning based on who won in the tournament.
Right.
Who won in the last game.
Yep.
This is sort of a way of measuring, like, maybe who's feeling it a little bit more. I don't know. Do you think that that's sort of a good idea, to do a 5% advantage to the team that won the last matchup?
I don't think it necessarily hurts. I also think it could account for the team that in these playoffs, the situation, the way it I believe it has worked out, is that it also accounts for the team getting the hammer in the first end, which is an advantage. So in the playoffs, we know who's going to get it because you don't have that draw to the button. And these one is the higher ranked team. So I think it helps account for that in this scenario as well, that the hammer factor is going to be a little increased just because you know who's going to start the game with it. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's another thing to give the odds a bit more in that favor.
Yeah, so I kind of like that way of doing it. So in this case, by doing that, because the Swiss beat the Swedes in the round robin, that means that Switzerland would have 55%, Sweden would have 45% chance within this simulation.
That's right. So what we can do now to simulate the results. So when I simulated the round robin games, I made each game have 10 different outcomes.
Yeah.
And then took the median of those outcomes. I think for the playoffs, we should just do one outcome.
Okay.
It's sort of, I mean, over the course of more games, like if you do 10 games or you do 100 games or 1,000 games, it increases the chances that the better team is going to win.
Right, but this is a one-off.
Right, but because this is a one-off, I think it'll make it like a little more random and a little more fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
If we do that. So what I've done is I've created a set, or 100 sets of numbers. And in each set, there's a distinct number from 1 to 100.
Okay.
I'm going to, because this is a 55% to a 45%, my set 55 to set 1, that's going to be my numbers that are in favor of Switzerland.
Yep.
And set 56 to 100 is going to be the result where Sweden wins.
Okay.
And then what I'm going to do is I have on here a simulated 100-sided die.
Okay. I would like to see a 100-sided die in real life. You think it'd be small enough that I could pick it up?
Maybe. There, I mean, maybe there's Dungeons and Dragons people, right? Do they use big-sided dies?
I don't know.
I think a 20-sided for sure.
What shape would it be? What would the name of the shape of a 100-sided die be?
Oh, a centahedron? I don't know.
Centahedron. I don't know. I would just like to see that.
Because I think that 12-sided is dodecahedron.
Okay.
So, anyway,
all right.
It's sort of fun.
So, so you got your 100-sided simulated die there. So you're just going to roll it.
I'm going to roll it.
And if it's between 1 and 55, Switzerland is into the semifinal. And if it is 56 to 100, it's going to be the Swedes. So here we go.
All right, here we go. And roll. The number is 3.
So 3. So Switzerland, Yannick Schwaller moves into the semifinal. No, I can't remember, Scott. Do they do reseeding in this, or is it a bracket?
They do reseed.
Okay, so that means that they would play Korea in the semifinal in a 2-3 matchup from the round robin.
Yeah, pretty good. So let me get that into our results here.
Yeah.
The next matchup, as you said, the United States against Scotland.
Yes. So pre-tournament, you had a 54.55% weighting towards the Scottish team, but the Americans won the round robin game. So with that 5% swing we're giving based off of that head-to-head, that pushes it to a 50.45 advantage for the Americans. So just under a half percentage point advantage to the American, Scott. This is as close to a 50-50 as you can get.
Yeah, this is pretty crazy. And so because of this, I'm going to take numbers 1 to 51 for the US.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And 1 to 49. It is.
I mean, if it's 51, we're going to get. I'm not only going to have to answer angry Danish people, I'm going to have to answer some angry Scots too.
Yeah, you probably don't want to do that, right? All right, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it. So again, 1 to 55 for the Americans, 52. Do 100 for the Scots, 100 side die, and we roll.
Go. Whoa.
Oh, is it 51?
It's 88.
88, an upset.
We've got an upset.
So Bruce Mowat and his team, they get the win in this simulation, and now it is going to be the Scots and the Canadians. That's the matchup you would have wanted to see in the final, I think, Scott, in like a real world scenario. Scotland being the birthplace of the sport, Canada being the biggest participants, certainly at a recreational level, and the country that tends to dominate the international scene. And having that in Glasgow, in Scotland, I think that's the matchup going into this for a final that we were all kind of rooting for, just from a TV perspective. That would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Sean. It's what you sort of want in Scotland, especially.
Yeah, I think that would have been a lot of fun. For as much as I loved the TSN crew, they wouldn't have been on site. Vic and Russ might have been there, but certainly the production would have been a WCF production, and I would have tried my best to find the Rona call of that game.
Oh yeah, that would be pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that's what the people want, no question. So in the semifinals now we have Canada and Scotland, Korea and Switzerland. Pre-tournament odds in the Canada-Scotland matchup were weighted to Brad Gushue, not by much, though, a 52.7% edge to Brad Gushue and Team Canada, 47.3. I mean, there's more decimal points than that, but I'm rounding to the first decimal point. 47.3 for the Scottish team. So, of course, Canada won the head-to-head matchup in the round robin, so that pushes it to 57.7 and 42.3 there, Scott. So are we going to do 1 to 58 for the Canadians and 59 to 100 for the Scots?
I think that we should, yes.
Okay. So here we go. We got the 100 side die getting ready.
Okay, getting ready to roll it. And
let's do it.
Roll. The number is 40.
The number is 40. Canada gets the win
over Scotland.
And Brad Gushue is into another World Championship final, and it's going to be either against Korea or Switzerland. Pre-tournament odds 75% for the Koreans, 25%. Again, I'm rounding for the Swiss with the 5-point bump. That'll put us at 80 and 20%. So.
Wow. Yeah, this is a real underdog team, this Swiss team.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about how their hammer factor wasn't very good?
Yeah.
How Yannick Schwaller, the numbers all point to them not being as good as they had been.
Yep.
These kind of miracle runs happen, Sean.
It happens, yeah, and that's what we like to see, a real underdog. Of course, he finished third. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Sometimes the 100-sided die rolls your way.
Sometimes it does, and sometimes it don't.
All right. So 1 to 80 will be the Koreans. 81 to 100 will be the Swiss. What do we got?
All right, we're gonna roll. We got 63.
Okay, so the Koreans, a comfortable win there over the Swiss. That means we have a championship final of Korea and Canada at the 2020 Men's World Championship. So Brad Gushue, of course, his team out of St. John's, Newfoundland, will be playing team Kim Chang-min out of Uiseong, South Korea. Scott, I don't know if many people would have predicted that. I don't think I would have had, we always, of course, in our previews pick 4 teams for the playoffs. I don't know if I would have had the South Koreans in my pick of 4 in this field.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too as I was doing this. Like, all their numbers point to them having been really strong all season. Maybe if we had factored in some of that, competition strength, it could have led to some different results. But the numbers kind of are what they are.
Yeah, your record. What is it, Bill Parcells? You are what your record says you are?
I guess so, yeah. So Canada versus Korea. I'm sorry, I'm trying to put the numbers in at the same time here. So
yeah,
what do you see?
So pre-tournament odds were in favor of the Koreans at 56%, 56.3% to be precise, and for the Canadians they were down at 43.7%. But of course, with the win by Brad Gushue in the round robin, that will push his odds up to just under 49%, just over 51% on the Korean side. And of course, in this matchup, as the 1-2 matchup, Canada would have the hammer to start the game as well. So another example that this 5% swing, I think, would make a difference.
Yeah, and I think I tried to factor hammer into this, because now that you draw for hammer, it's a lot more likely that if you're drawing really well, you'll get hammer 8, 9, maybe even 10 times in your 12 games. Whereas,
but it's hard to factor that.
Yeah.
Just because, like, you could be good and get the hammer in the first end a lot, but be terrible at hammer efficiency.
Right. So, yeah, it's hard to know how much of a factor it is having the hammer at the start of the game based on the statistics I have in front of me from Curling Zone. I'm sure that there are more statistics in the background that could help us to do this, but we're just having fun for having a podcast, right?
Yeah, we just want to know who would win.
Yeah, and I think we're going to find out.
Yeah, so let's do it. So are we doing 51-49?
I think 51-49, yeah.
All right, so numbers 1 to 51 will be a Korean world champion. I believe that would be the first world championship for the Korean men. Not obviously the first for this specific team, but I think ever, if I'm not mistaken. And if it is from 52 to 100, Brad Gushue gets his second world championship, second in 3 years.
Yeah, so are you ready, Sean?
I'm on the edge of you can't see me, of course, but I am actually on the edge of my seat.
Oh boy. All right, count me down and I'll click the roll button.
3, 2, 1, let's roll.
And we rolled a 66 again.
Oh my goodness, what? Brad Gushue beating the odds against the Koreans twice to capture his second world championship in 3 years. Canada comes out on top, and I got to tell you, Scott, in the pantheon of Brad Gushue's career, there's going to be, if you do a top 3 of it, number 3 is going to be his shot for 7, where he only scores 6 in the gold medal game of the 2006 Olympics. Number 2 is going to be that draw in St. John's to win his first Brier. And number 1 is going to be when the math simulation gives him the world championship. What a moment.
What a moment indeed. Isn't that incredible? I am.
No, I mean, they're really good.
They're really good.
Right, their numbers are good. It makes sense, but it's a little surprising just in that, as we've been talking about, that the Koreans had such a strong edge-wise based on their winning percentage here. So we're also putting in for the bronze medal game right now, Scotland versus Switzerland. Pre-tournament odds, the Scottish team had a strong advantage here, up at 66.5% to the 33.3% for the Swiss. In the round robin matchup, you had let me look here, the Swiss team winning. So they get the bump of 5%. So that brings us down to a 61.5 to a 38.5. So should we call it 61-39?
I think we'll do 62 because it rounds up.
Okay. So 1-62, Scotland gets the bronze, and 63 up. It's going to be a Swiss team filling out the podium.
And we get 31.
31. So Bruce Mowat gets a bronze medal at the 2020 Men's World Championships. Good result there for him.
Yeah.
To go along with his bronze medal in 2018 in Las Vegas.
Yeah, pretty good. So obviously Korea are the story of this week, right? If we're looking back on oh boy, what happened this week? What was the big stories that they're writing about?
Yeah.
It's got to be that Korea.
Yeah, that's what we'd be talking about, right? If the world was as it normally is, you would be doing the Men's World Championship episode by yourself,
right?
Or with another person, and that's what you'd be talking about. It'd be Brad Gushue, great, but what about this Korean team? It's that if this were to play out in real life, that would for sure be the story. Maybe too through the week, probably not for championship weekend, but through the week it also would have been what's wrong with Nicholas Edin.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
So a lot of fun there. Once again, the finals or your podiums: Canada first, Korea second, Scotland taking home the bronze.
Yeah, pretty.
Just like that, we have awarded the 2020 Men's World Championship.
Yeah, congratulations, Team Gushue. We'll tag you on Twitter.
Yeah.
And that was pretty fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Yeah. So now that I've got some of the framework done, maybe we'll go and simulate the women's event eventually.
Yeah, I think that's something we should do just to see if we can get Anna Hasselberg that first world championship.
Wouldn't that be great?
She's on the doorstep. She's been on the doorstep so many times. Maybe, but if we can certainly try to do that. This is a lot of fun. It's interesting too, Scott, to talk about the math. I know that last year at the analytics conference in Boston, what is it called? The sports analytics conference that they do every year. Jerry Gertz went down. A couple other people who were involved in sports analytics or curling analytics went down. So there is like this community of people who are doing the analytics for the sport. I know a lot of the teams are looking at the numbers as well. You have somebody like Brandon Botcher who, he's an engineer, right? So he's sort of, professionally is involved in thinking about things in this sort of structural way, and how can we make the numbers all make sense? And with people like that, I'm always amazed at some of the professional pursuits of the curlers, just what they do, because a lot of them are in very are in professions that require a lot of analytic ability, which maybe isn't surprising because you need that strategic sensibility to be a top level curler. So but you have these people who are interested in the numbers and are diving into the numbers in more and more detail. So it's kind of fun to do it at this level for us. Yeah,
I think it's pretty fun. And maybe I'll do a bit of a write-up on how I created that, and see if I can get some feedback from other people as to how it would be better to tweak it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So once we have the links for that, we'll post them up, and as you said, we'll post along with this the grid that we have for the results and some of the methodology behind it. So great job, Scott.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I thought it was about time I contributed to the podcast.
That was good. It was really very entertaining stuff. So I think that'll do it for this episode. Anything else you want to say, Scott, to the people?
Thanks for listening. I know for me, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts lately. I really love how it helps distract us in these times. So thanks for listening. And the best thing you can do is give us a rating on iTunes. Any rating, the more ratings we get, the more easier.
There you go.
The easier it'll be to find us for others. So yeah, give us a rating and make it a good one.
Yeah, preferably a good rating. Yeah, that certainly does help. And of course, you can follow along Twitter, Instagram at Game of Stones Pod. Scott's there at Scott Lakes TV. I'm at Dr. Shawnee Fever. And of course, you can always email the show, Game of Stones Podcast at gmail.com. So thanks again, everybody, for listening and follow along. Hope you're doing well. We're going to continue to churn out some episodes. I think we're going to shift, Scott, to the summer schedule now. And we might drop some other stuff off of on other days, but I think we'll start going back to that Wednesday schedule for the summer, and just get back into that regular routine of posting on Wednesdays.
Yeah, and we've got some great ideas. So
yeah,
looking forward
I'm
to
looking forward to recording some of these. These are going to be a lot of fun, and just because the games are canceled doesn't mean we can't talk about them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So again, hope everyone's doing well out there, and get in touch if you have ideas. We have our thoughts of what we want to do. This was a lot of fun for me, and I think Scott enjoyed it as well. So we're gonna keep doing stuff like this, some sort of over the top fun stuff, sort of absurdist kind of stuff too a little bit. But keep following along and look for the new episodes every Wednesday now through the summer is what our schedule is going to be. So until we talk to you next Wednesday, wash your hands, keep your brooms on the ice, and don't dump that insert.
Make the final.